In this video, we're going to talk about money and traffic strategy in journalism and the case of Rolling Stone and Jonathan Majors. Remembering that there are no rules in journalism. Journalists can do really whatever the heck they want, particularly if we're talking about a public figure. There really is no case to be made for defamation or libel, particularly if you're an elected official. But if you're just a public figure, you can't really sue for that and win. Unlike other professions, there is no licensing for journalism, as there are for lawyers and doctors. There are no journalistic police that will show up when a journalist makes a mistake. Typically what happens when media organizations make mistakes is they go quiet, don't say anything about it. So there are no rules in journalism, and that's what I mean by that. The other thing to know about journalism is it's really about who decides what story will run and who decides what the story will be. Clearly, somebody at Rolling Stone has decided that Jonathan Majors is going to be the avatar for domestic violence. That's interesting, given that there are a lot of people out there to choose from on this subject matter, and his case was not in any way, shape, or form a clear-cut case. It was a misdemeanor offense, something that, you got to really struggle to find that word misdemeanor when this gets reported on. But really, if his name was Joe Smith, we all know that a deal would have been struck with Alvin Bragg's office, and the thing would have never gotten into court in the first place. And then when you have this beyond absurd video of Jonathan Majors being chased by his ex. Has anyone noticed that the video is never referenced in Rolling Stone in these latest articles that came out this week in the run-up to the movie premiere of Magazine Dreams? Of course, Magazine Dreams is coming out, and of course, Rolling Stone tries to figure out a way to run a negative piece, you guessed it, about Jonathan Majors.
You had recently opened up to the Hollywood Reporter. I read this article. And I know it must have been difficult to talk about because you talked about the abuse that you suffered, that you went through as a child, Jonathan. That's very hard to come out and talk about that because it's something so private. What got you to this place that you felt you were able to share that?
Growth.
Okay, so let's talk about Rolling Stone magazine again as it pertains to the actor Jonathan Majors and the coverage that he gets from them, which I feel like is very strange. It was strange back in 2024. It's even stranger now because the context is completely different. We are going through a situation in this country where there is a fair chance that the structure of our government and democracy could actually end in the United States. And off in the background, we see, of course, President Trump selecting as his Secretary of Defense somebody who was actually accused of rape. And then a woman actually files a complaint to the police.
That wants to talk to us.
Did you sexually assault a woman in Monterey, California?
I have, as far as the media is concerned, I'll keep this very simple. The matter was fully investigated, and I was completely cleared, and that's why I'm illegal. Thank you very much.
This person, Pete Hegseth, then gets confirmed by the United States Senate. He is now the sitting Secretary of Defense. He leads the biggest agency of the federal government of the United States. And Rolling Stone is focused on the actor Jonathan Majors.
Sure. What people are saying, so you have the chance to address it. So the first is this alleged rape that took place in 2017 at a...
Now, to complete the story, our current Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, was cleared. It was never named who the person was, and then the information came out that he had paid this person $50,000, probably connected to an NDA that requires this person to keep their mouth shut. Keeping in mind that the person who nominated him was also accused of rape. That would be the President of the United States. The finding in court was a little bit different for him. But my point here is that, if Rolling Stone wants to talk about domestic violence and sexual violence, they have a ton of territory to excavate. They have a ton of players to choose from. So I always find it strange that they choose John Majors in a misdemeanor case. It's not that I don't think John Majors is important, but he doesn't have his hands near the nuclear codes, and he doesn't run an $840 billion agency with 3.4 million people involved in it. But also, compared to many others, his case was minor. A misdemeanor that would have been a ticket that was It was not as serious as a lot of these other stories in the news. You could fairly argue that what I'm saying here is whataboutism and, well, Rolling Stone does entertainment, really doesn't do politics that hard. So why would they focus on this? Why would they focus on the Secretary of Defense or even the President, right? But what Rolling Stone is doing is so glaring. They love focusing on black males. Remember, black men are 6% of the population in the United States. And I'm going to go ahead and guess they make up more than 6% of the stories on this particular subject matter. Let's roll that clip reel again that I had earlier in the video. As I said, there are plenty of people to choose from. Here's the other thing. So Jonathan Majors sits down for an interview with the Hollywood Reporter. And he reveals that he was the victim of sexual violence when he was 8 years old. Let's watch the clip again.
You had recently opened up to the Hollywood Reporter. I read this article. And I know it must have been difficult to talk about because you talked about the abuse that you suffered, that you went through as a child, Jonathan. That's very hard to come out and talk about that because it's something so private. What got you to this place that you felt you were able to share that?
Growth.
One would think that if Rolling Stone and their editorial folks think that that's an important topic, that it would be an important topic when Jonathan Majors is talking about it as himself as the victim. Apparently that's not the case. Apparently there can only be one victim of one gender at Rolling Stone. Because what else could explain not having a story on that? Why isn't there a story on that? I'm not saying it's got to be 500 stories or whatever, but it would seem to me that's a story. And you know there's some gender bias going on there because if that was a female actress, you can best believe there'd be a story on that. So that's sort of interesting in itself. Now, this column that came out yesterday is another thing of beauty. In 2019, I had to deal with Rolling Stone writer Jamil Smith, who of course is not there anymore. Like Cheyenne Roundtree, he's another black writer, black journalist that Rolling Stone loves to put out there to write negative things about black people. I mean, it is not an accident that it always seems to be a black writer that is writing negative things about black people. It's not always the case, but is frequently the case. In the case of Justin Fairfax, unlike Jonathan Majors, nothing was adjudicated. There was no hard evidence of anything. It was just people talking. And people talking is all it takes for the media because the media needs traffic. They need web traffic to these websites to make money. That is what this is, and that is the driving force behind so much of what you see in journalism right now. This is making money from content, and to make money from content, you have to have controversy and you have to feed somebody through the machine. I'll give Cheyenne Roundtree one thing. At least she made a phone call. At least she did some investigating. At least she talked to people. Jamil Smith wrote up a bunch of stuff because he was, quote, a columnist, and this is another sort of dangerous construct in my view in journalism. These columnists don't have to do anything other than have an opinion and write something. Again, there are no rules. There's no duty to investigate. There's no duty to call anybody. There's no duty to fact check or go over the facts as already established. There's no duty to do anything in journalism. Journalists do whatever the heck they want, which, by the way, is why Time Sullivan, remember the case Times v. Sullivan, because the Supreme Court is probably going to flip it. But at any rate, there are no rules in journalism. There just aren't. People, when they make mistakes in journalism, they'll point to the First Amendment and they'll walk away. Then that brings us to the piece by C.T. Jones, Rolling Stone, that was published on March 19. And so let's read this. Majors, who was convicted in December 2023 of recklessly assaulting and harassing his ex-girlfriend Grace Jabari, has spent the past month staging a steadfast attempt at career rehabilitation. Well, of course, none of that makes any sense because Magazine Dreams was made 2 years ago. There's no way that Jonathan Majors could have planned all of this because he didn't know that that whole fiasco in court was going to happen when he made this movie that he's promoting right now. So the idea that this is some sort of steadfast attempt that's all carefully planned out is completely ridiculous. Notice also in this, again, the word misdemeanor is missing. It's always missing because everybody understands that when they hear the word misdemeanor, that means that it is a frivolous crime. Everybody knows that. I mean, whether it actually is in the minds of the participants, let's leave that to the side for just 1 second. Everybody understands that a misdemeanor charge is the lowest level charge you can have under the law, under criminal law. So this is always interesting to me that the word misdemeanor is always somehow not in these stories. Very interesting opinion piece. What opinion pieces allow journalists to do is really to write a bunch of stuff in a narrative form, unburdened by facts and shielded by opinion when you want to stick certain points in. Obviously, the major thesis of this is that Jonathan Majors hasn't admitted anything. He hasn't apologized for anything. See how the standards shift when a black male is involved? Never would you hear in a million years this type of language. Remember again, Alec Baldwin shot somebody dead on a set by accident. And I'm trying right now, I'm struggling to remember, did he ever apologize for that? Did he ever admit any wrongdoing for that? They blame the armorer for it. By the way, this is a film that he produced. He's responsible for all these people. So, I mean, it's like, really, you're acting as if you have nothing to do with any of the decisions on who's hired and what their responsibilities are. And a person is dead, by the way. So this is not a misdemeanor case. The person is dead. So, I mean, it's amazing how the responsibilities shift and the requirements and the things, oh, well, he hasn't apologized, he hasn't done this, he hasn't done that. And then, of course, if he did apologize, there'd be a spate of stories in Rolling Stone talking about how, oh, see, we were right, he did it. It's just, I mean, there's no winning with these people. It is a never-ending thing. It doesn't matter that it got adjudicated, doesn't matter that, 52-week program. Doesn't matter that, Jabari locks him out of his own place. None of that stuff matters. That, she's chasing him down the street, which of course isn't mentioned in this article. And so none of that matters. The only thing that matters is we got to have an avatar, a black avatar for domestic violence. That's what they want, and that is what matters. And how you know that is that they're not talking about any of these other cases, either now or when they were happening over these last few years. What Rolling Stone does with these other cases is maybe they do one story, maybe they even do two stories. But with John Majors, they make it a project. Story after story, investigation after investigation. Maybe there'll be books, maybe there'll be documentaries. I don't know what anybody has noticed, but there's a lot of these black male documentaries that keep rolling out. The last one was Leaving Neverland 2. And I'll let my friend over at Popcorn Planet define what happened on that one.
I was left feeling that not only does Dan Reed not actually care about the truth, but that Dan Reed is remorseless, vulgar, and pretty despicable in his disdain for Michael Jackson. There's like a weird joy he has in trying to tarnish this man's legacy.
So many people out there who can tell the truth. And, the media is wondering why it's failing. Business model is failing because people are taken over by corporate interest and muzzled by corporate interest, and they keep hiring the same types of journalists that don't really want to tell the full truth. And Rolling Stone, the bias is showing. The glaring racial double standard is showing, Rolling Stone. We see your headline, and the headline doesn't jive with what actually happened on the audio. Everybody can see that. Nobody's stupid. Jay-Z, anybody? They have done a Jay-Z story, but let's understand something. Jay-Z was more than likely now extorted. ABC News and NBC have proven that, and now it's probably going to be proven in court. Where's the Rolling Stone pieces on that? What's going on with that? This is Lauren Burke. I'll be back soon.